When you walk away from someone, it isn't just sadness that echoes inside them, it is their entire nervous system erupting like an alarm. In that instant, the brain floods with cortisol and adrenaline, the same chemical storm our ancestors felt when separated from their tribe in the wilderness. To the human mind, abandonment has always meant danger. And what's astonishing is this: the brain cannot distinguish between emotional pain and physical injury. Heartbreak lights up the same regions as a broken bone. Think of that for a moment. Your absence is not just a bruise on their feelings, it is interpreted as a threat to survival itself. That's why their chest tightens, why their thoughts spiral, why they check their phone every few minutes as if it were a lifeline. This isn't weakness. It is the mammalian brain grasping for safety in a world that suddenly feels hostile. And here lies the deeper truth. Their reaction often says less about the depth of love and more about how the mind interprets loss. If this message strikes you, give it a like so more men can see it. Subscribe to Stoic Station, your home for strength, stillness, and self-mastery. And in the comments, drop a simple 1 if you've felt this panic, or 2 if you've seen it in others. Start this journey now, because the moment you stop chasing, something ancient awakens inside them. And that is where the story begins. Let's dive in. 1. Attachment gets triggered. The moment you stop chasing, something ancient stirs inside them, like an alarm wired deep in their nervous system long before they could even speak. What you see on the surface isn't just someone feeling ignored, it's their entire attachment system screaming for survival. To the human brain, silence feels like abandonment, and abandonment has always meant danger. That's why your decision to step back shakes them harder than you expect. If they lean anxious, they cling even tighter, desperate to restore proximity. They analyze every word you last said, as if it hides a secret code. They scroll through your profiles. They show up where they think you might be. If they lean avoidant, they appear unfazed, as though your absence means nothing. But inside, their body trembles with chaos, their emotions lagging behind, surfacing months later in sudden late-night messages. And often the ones who seem the strongest, the ones performing independence with steady faces and loud confidence, are the ones who ache the most deeply. They crave recognition quietly while disguising it as pride. The truth is, they can't control these responses. Their system reacts before reason has a chance to arrive. It's not a tactic, not a choice. It's biology pulling their strings. That's why their sudden intensity should never be mistaken for love. It isn't proof of value, it's instinct fighting for safety. And here's where your power lies. The Stoics remind us, clarity is freedom. If you recognize that their frantic behavior is about survival, not about your worth, you won't be pulled back into chaos. Instead of reacting, you stay steady. The next time you feel the urge to respond to their panic, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly about me or about their survival system? That single question breaks the cycle and keeps you in command. And once you see through the storm of instinct, you step into a higher ground where their chaos no longer dictates your calm. 2. Loss hurts twice as much. What terrifies people most is not failing to gain something new, but losing what they thought was already theirs. And when loss comes, it doesn't strike with equal weight. It cuts twice as deep as any joy ever could. That's why when you walk away, they don't simply feel sadness. Their brain interprets it as emotional bankruptcy, a collapse far heavier than the high of your first kiss or the excitement of those early days. Suddenly, the floor beneath them is gone. This is why, almost overnight, they may start texting more, making promises, or playing the role of the perfect partner they never were before. On the surface, it looks like love reborn, but beneath it, it's something else entirely. It's loss aversion in disguise. The cruel truth is, they are not truly fighting for you. They are fighting against the unbearable cost of loss itself. This explains why people often chase harder after rejection, even in relationships that were clearly toxic. The human mind prefers the pain of what's familiar over the emptiness of the unknown. It's easier to cling to what once was, even if it hurt, than to face the terrifying silence of starting again. But here is the lesson. Chasing after loss is not love. It's fear dressed as devotion. The Stoics remind us that fear distorts reality, while clarity restores freedom. Recognizing this truth keeps you from mistaking desperation for value. So the next time you feel the pull of their sudden intensity, pause. Write down 3 things you actually gained by losing this relationship. When you name your freedom, you weaken the grip of loss. And in that clarity, you rise above the fear that traps them. 3. They rewrite you as perfect. When you stop chasing, something strange happens. Their memory begins to lie. Suddenly, in their mind, you're flawless. They don't remember the distance, the fights, or the ways you were incompatible. Instead, every sweet moment becomes magnified, polished, replayed like a highlight reel. This is the idealization trap. To accept the truth that losing you might actually be good for them would shatter their defense against pain. So their mind edits the story, turning cracks into perfection. The more toxic the relationship truly was, the stronger this illusion becomes. Their brain, desperate to avoid suffering, transforms into a novelist, rewriting misery as if it were a great romance. And here lies the danger, not only for them, but for you as well, because if you also surrender to this trap, you'll both end up longing for people who never really existed. You won't be missing each other. You'll be missing a fantasy, a mirage built by memory. That is why clarity is your shield. Memory edits, but truth liberates. The Stoics taught us that longing for illusions only chains the soul, while facing reality frees it. So the next time nostalgia whispers, resist the urge to ask, "What did I lose?" Instead, ask a sharper, more honest question, "What did I survive?" That single shift unmasks the fantasy and reveals the strength that carried you through. And when you see clearly, the power of illusion fades, leaving you grounded in reality. Because in the end, you are not here to chase ghosts or worship false perfection. You are here to rise above the stories your mind invents and step firmly into the truth that sets you free. 4. Defenses hide the collapse. When you stop chasing, their ego scrambles for cover. The defenses come rushing in like shields raised in battle, quick, automatic, and often loud. They rationalize with sharp words, "We were never right for each other." They project blame. "You're the one afraid of commitment." They deny reality with calm insistence. "This is just a phase. You'll come back." On the surface, it looks like confidence, even arrogance. But underneath, it's nothing more than emotional airbags deploying, desperate to soften the crash of rejection. Behind the mask, something far more fragile is happening. Their identity, partly built on being your person, fractures, leaving them unmoored. A piece of who they believed themselves to be suddenly collapses, and that collapse is too painful to admit outright. That is why their words often sound cold, cutting, even detached, yet their actions leak desperation. You can sense the contradiction. The self they show the world and the self they feel inside are no longer the same, and the war between them grows louder. This is where most people get trapped, arguing with the mask, trying to prove the truth. But the Stoic path is different. You don't dismantle defenses with words, you let reality do the work. Your task is not to wrestle with illusions, but to guard your own mind from being pulled into them. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. So, when confronted with denial or blame, Stay still. Breathe deeply. Repeat that reminder inwardly. Don't fight their storm. Let them wrestle with it on their own. Because real strength is not found in reacting, but in refusing to be bent by the chaos of someone else's collapse. 5. Bargaining masks their fear. Sooner or later, when you stop chasing, they begin to bargain. At first, it's quiet, whispered promises to themselves. If I change this one thing, they'll come back. Or, if I just give them space for 2 weeks, they'll realize they miss me. Then it grows louder, spilling into gestures aimed at you. Gifts appear, sudden lifestyle changes they once swore they'd never make, declarations of transformation. On the surface, it looks like romance reborn, but beneath it lies something much more fragile. Bargaining is not love, it is fear disguised as devotion. At its core, bargaining is a desperate attempt to regain control in a moment when all control is gone. They are not truly negotiating with you. They are negotiating with their own terror of being powerless. Every gift, every promise, every grand performance is less about you and more about silencing that fear. And here's the cruel irony. The more they bargain, the further they drift from genuine healing. Each imagined deal becomes a delay tactic, postponing the one truth they need to accept, your choice to step away. This is where you must be vigilant. Guilt can tempt you to respond, to ease their fear by playing along. But love is not a contract. It cannot be earned through deals or traded like currency. Love must be given freely, or it ceases to be love at all. The Stoics remind us that your peace is not for sale, and it is never your responsibility to carry someone else's bargaining table on your back. So write yourself a simple rule. I will not trade my peace for someone else's bargaining. Place it somewhere visible. When the weight of their pleas presses on you, return to it. Because real strength is found not in negotiating with fear, but in standing firm in truth and letting fear unravel on its own. 6. Their social identity breaks. Relationships don't just shape your heart, they shape the story of who you are in the world. And when you stop chasing, you don't just walk away from someone, you shatter the mirror they used to see themselves in. Suddenly, they are no longer part of a we. They are left with I. For many, that shift is more terrifying than the breakup itself. Friends begin to ask questions, mutual circles grow awkward, and the social proof of being chosen evaporates. To them, your absence is not just a private ache, it's a public loss, a blow to the image they've carefully maintained. This is why rebounds often happen so quickly. It's rarely about genuine connection, it's about repairing their status, showing the world, see, I'm still wanted. The rebound is less about heart and more about image, a desperate attempt to patch a broken identity. But here's the truth they avoid. Chasing identity through others only deepens the void. External validation cannot rebuild what has fractured within. A borrowed spotlight may soothe for a moment, but it cannot heal. And this is where your strength must stand firm. It is not your duty to guard their reputation or protect their image. Your responsibility is to guard your own peace. The Stoics remind us that self-worth is never measured in the eyes of the crowd, but in the steadiness of your own soul. So instead of losing yourself in their updates, reclaim your own ground. Spend one evening reconnecting with old friends, or return to passions you set aside long ago. Rebuild your identity, not theirs. Because in the end, the man who no longer chases proves that his value is not borrowed, it is unshakable, and it is his alone. 7. The power shifts to you. Every relationship carries an invisible balance of power, and the moment you stop chasing, that balance shifts. Suddenly, the reins are in your hands, whether you realize it or not. For so long, they may have believed they held the upper hand, that your devotion made them untouchable. But when you step back, when you no longer feed the cycle of pursuit, their ego feels the ground quake beneath it. The one who cares less, or at least appears to, always holds more control. That's why your silence unsettles them so deeply. It reverses the script. They may lash out, play jealousy games, or attempt manipulation to claw back what they lost. Yet, at its core, their anger isn't about love. It's about the loss of influence over your emotional world. They're not grieving the bond itself. They're grieving the collapse of control. This is why some exes turn vindictive, why their actions grow erratic. They're fighting not for you, but for power. But here lies the paradox. True strength is not about seizing power, but in proving you don't need it. The Stoics remind us that dignity is the highest authority you can ever hold. To walk away with calm, to refuse to be baited, to remain composed while they unravel, that is real sovereignty. So when their provocations come, when you feel the sting of their attempts to pull you back into chaos, breathe deeply and ask yourself, am I reacting or am I responding? Reacting gives them control. Responding with calm and clarity keeps the power where it belongs, with you. And in that moment, you show that real mastery is not over them, but over yourself. 8. Your absence sparks growth. Here's the paradox that few ever see clearly. The pain of your absence may be the only path to their true growth. In relationships, people often outsource their emotional labor without realizing it. You regulated their storms, you carried their burdens, you filled the spaces they refused to confront. And as long as you were there, they had no reason to build those muscles of resilience for themselves. But when you step away, the mirror appears. Suddenly, they must face what they avoided. They are forced to manage their own chaos, to rediscover passions they once abandoned, to rebuild connections outside of you. For many, the collapse feels unbearable, yet the collapse is the very soil where transformation begins. The ones who fall apart most violently are often the ones who needed this lesson the most. Rebounds may distract them, but they cannot erase the call to grow. This is where temptation strikes. You may feel the pull to rush back, to save them from their struggle. But rescuing them doesn't heal them. It robs them of the only teacher strong enough to force change, pain itself. The Stoics understood this well. Crisis births transformation, no comfort ever could. So let absence do its work. Let the silence become their crucible, and while they wrestle with their shadows, you turn inward. Redirect that energy into your own evolution. Spend 1 week building a habit you've neglected, whether it's journaling, training your body, or mastering a skill you once set aside. In doing so, you prove a powerful truth. Absence is not emptiness. Absence can be fertile ground, both for them and for you. And in that fertile ground, strength takes root. 9. Time and memory distort. When you stop chasing, time itself begins to bend. Memory no longer serves as a record of what truly happened. It becomes both a drug to soothe their pain and a prison that keeps them trapped. They start replaying the highlight reel, polishing every sweet moment, while carefully editing out the arguments, the disappointments, the truths that justified your leaving. The past takes on a golden glow it never actually had, and with that glow, the present becomes unbearable, because it is the only place where you are gone. The future, once open with possibilities, now feels impossible to imagine without you. So they escape into fantasies, weaving endless what-if-you-return scenarios, clinging not to reality, but to the ghost of what they wish the relationship had been. And here is the danger. You can be pulled into the same trap. Nostalgia whispers that maybe it wasn't so bad, maybe you lost something perfect. But nostalgia is a liar. The mind edits mercilessly, erasing the very wounds that forced you to walk away. This distortion is a cage that can hold you both captive. That is why Stoic clarity is essential. See the past not as your longing paints it, but as it actually was. Memory is not truth. Your discipline must be. So make it practical. Each night, write one honest sentence about why it ended. Do this for 30 days. By putting truth to paper, you rewire the story in your mind, stripping away the illusions that nostalgia builds. Over time, the spell breaks, and what felt like a haunting becomes only a chapter, one you've read, understood, and finally closed. 10. The break becomes the door. Here's the secret few ever speak aloud. Walking away is not destruction. It is initiation. It feels, in the beginning, like devastation for both sides. They lose the identity they once wrapped around you, and you wrestle with the guilt of leaving. Both of you feel torn apart, as if something essential has been shattered. But what feels like ruin is often the first step into something greater. Endings carve out space. Rock bottom is not the grave, it is the foundation. And silence, heavy and uncomfortable, becomes the very ground where transformation begins to grow. The temptation will always be there, to rush back, to soften their pain or yours, to ease the discomfort by slipping into the familiar. But comfort steals growth. If you sacrifice your truth simply to protect theirs, you both stay small. Neither heals, neither evolves. You trap yourself in the same loop of dependency, pretending to nurture when all you're really doing is preventing both from facing the truth. And the truth is this: no one can mature on borrowed strength. The higher path is not the easy one, but it is the only one that leads forward. Hold firm. Refuse to let guilt or fear drag you back into a place you've outgrown. You cannot love someone into maturity. You can only embody it yourself. Your strength, your clarity, your silence, these are not punishments. They are proof that you are becoming the man who no longer needs to beg or chase to be whole. So turn this break into a door. Each day, ask yourself, who am I becoming now that I've stopped chasing? Let that question guide your choices. Let it shape your discipline. Over time, you will see that the ending you feared was not a collapse. It was a passage into sovereignty, into peace, into a life where love is no longer about clinging, but about standing side by side, complete. The break was never the end. It was always the beginning. When you choose to walk away, you trigger more than a breakup. You ignite earthquakes inside their world. Their attachment alarms go off. Loss aversion burns like fire. Defenses rise. Bargaining takes over. And illusions twist memory into something it never was. They scramble desperately to regain power, to hold on to identity, to restore the comfort that has been torn away. But beneath all the chaos, a deeper truth quietly unfolds. Your absence is not just their challenge. It is the doorway to growth, and more importantly, it is the same doorway for you. The Stoics taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Your silence, your discipline, your refusal to trade away your peace for temporary comfort, these are not tactics, they are transformations. What may look like cold detachment from the outside is in truth the birth of a man who has learned that real power comes from within, not from being needed by someone else. So let them feel the void. Let them bargain until exhaustion. Let their memory distort into fantasies. Let their defenses rise like shields. That is their journey to wrestle with, not yours to fix. While they are wrestling with shadows, you are building in the light. You are discovering that strength was never about chasing her, convincing her, or holding her. Strength was always about mastering yourself. The man who no longer chases finally sees clearly. He was never really pursuing her at all. He was pursuing himself, and in that pursuit, he finds not just peace, but sovereignty. That is the gift hidden in the break, the truth that transforms endings into beginnings. If this message gave you clarity, don't let it fade into the background. Act on it. Like this video so it can reach more men who need the same reminder. Subscribe to Stoic Station, where strength, stillness, and self-mastery are not just spoken about but forged in practice. And in the comments, write this line: strength begins when chasing ends. Because the man who refuses to chase no longer follows, he leads, and that is where true power begins.